Okay, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, can you see me?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I said, can you
I can
see?
see you great. You look wonderful.
Okay, I can't see anything except for the Facebook, but okay, hopefully we are live because I don't see anything. Hey guys, are we live? Let me see. Yes, we are live. Okay, I see it now. Okay. So,
We live?
oops. Let me turn this down. A little bit of technical difficulties. Okay. Here we go. Hi, I am Latarsha, your life coach, transformational life coach. And today we will be having our topic is on why do people hold on to family secrets instead of breaking generational curses? Today, I'm hosting and I'm interviewing with Jodie Tedder, and Jodie will introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jodie Tedder. I live in the Northwest. I work in a law firm, and I am really happy to be here this evening with everyone.
Okay.
Do you want me to continue with my story, or do you want to kind of talk to your Facebook fans?
Okay. So I would like to know if you could please drop in a comment where you're logged in from. I just want to know where we all are logging in from. I don't know if I just can't see it yet or anybody is watching with us. But anyway, okay. So, okay. Imelda says she's Baltimore, Florida. Thank you for dropping that line for me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, Merlin. Thanks, Dana. Thank you guys. They're coming in, coming in. Okay, so Jody, you can go ahead and kind of give them a little bit about what you do about prisoner of no crime of my own.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll talk about
Oh,
that.
Los Angeles. Come on, Los Angeles.
All right, that's awesome.
Okay.
I'm here with you tonight, obviously, because I had a very tough start. I was a blonde haired child with green eyes, and I had a smile that my parents never could extinguish. And I still have that smile today. I lived with a brother and two sisters, and a mom and a dad. Let's go back to 1968, Delaware Lane.
Uh-huh.
In that home was both of my parents were actually pedophiles, unfortunately. At that time, we had a friend that hung out with us often. He was 6'5". His name was Craig, and he got to partake in all the childish, all the abusive games that happened in our home. It was really tough. I turned 4 when I moved out of that house. So all of those things happened before that time. Of course, I felt like I was 18 because that's what it feels like when you're going through abuse when you're a child. Um, so anyway, it was a really rough start. I mean, I obviously lost my virginity at that time. People talk about that. That's another thing that we could talk about. But before we actually moved out of that house, my father, I was with him one day and he took me to a hotel room with, when we got there, we met his friend and a woman that I didn't know. And at that time, they began partying. My parents did a lot of partying at the time. And anyway, I ended up witnessing a murder and a rape that day. We took her up to our property. My parents had 40 acres and we buried her there. Her body still is there. I've done a lot of work. I've had police help me, and my father is now deceased. So anyway, with all of this pain and tragedy, the abuse didn't stop with my parents until I left their home at 18. When I was in my early 20s, I saw this book. I was laying down in my bed, and in my mind's eye, I saw this book, and there was a woman, and she was in prison, and I saw the title, "A Prisoner by No Crime of My Own." I'm now 56, and I'm just beginning to share my story. It's been a hellacious 30 or 40 years coming out of such wretchedness. I blog, and through all that, I have met this beautiful woman, Latarsha, and together we are telling our stories. So that's kind of in a nutshell, a very small nutshell, a little bit about why I'm here and why I'm kind of qualified on this topic,
So
unfortunately.
I want to tell you this real quick. I was just told that they couldn't see us, so I sent a message asking if they could see us because for some reason I think my husband was saying that they couldn't see us. 1 second.
Oh,
Oh, I still had is watching with you. It's saying I'm saying, can y'all see and hear us? 1 second. Trying to see what was why would it do this? Can somebody put in a comment whether or not you can see us and hear us? I just want to be sure. I can see you, both of you. Thanks. Okay. I don't know what my husband was talking about. Everybody said they can. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that you was able to hear this. Okay. I'm sorry, Jody, for
no, you know what? It's fine. In the world of Zoom today, aren't we? We're ready for things like this, right?
right. Okay. So just giving a little bit of history, and thank you so much for sharing that, and I really appreciate it. But so what was put on my spirit when you and I talked and you and I connected was about why do people hold on to the family secrets? Why is it so scary, or what is it that people are afraid of to speak their truth or speak up and speak out about different things that go on in families?
For me, initially, it was about rejection from my father. I adored him. It seems very odd, but I think that when you are a prisoner to crimes like this, you become obsessed with the people who have kept you in these cells for your entire life. And so the initial rejection of my father was too much to bear. And then it's also the denial. I didn't know my own story because you don't live like it happened. You live like it didn't happen. You just remember the times you played Risk together, the times that you watched movies together and made popcorn. For all intents and purposes, we had some normal stuff I could make a cover story around and live with. And so I went forward, first because I didn't want their rejection, and second because I lived in denial.
Right. So and I can totally relate to that. I think that my fear was of coming forward and talking about my sexual abuse was because I was afraid of how my family would respond to me. And I remember, and this is the first time I'm sharing this, but I remember being about 27 years old because I remember I had my daughter. I think my daughter was about 2 years old. So I was about 27 or 2 or 3. And I went to my dad. And when I went to my dad and was talking to him about my sexual abuse, the first thing he said to me was, do you know what will happen to this family? Do you know what you would do to this family if you told that? And I felt devastated, and so when I shared that, I remember leaving and my heart had just dropped, and I said to myself, I will never bring this up again. And I went probably close to another 20 years of not sharing that or ever talking about it again. So I had suppressed it for another 20 years.
Right. And, as you and I have talked before, when I first started talking about this initially in my very early 20s, we had my father was a Southern Baptist. He was from Tennessee. My mother was from New York. That was an oxymoron constantly in our home. But anyway, when I first started talking about this, we had the pastor come to our home. And I told him about being in the house, not our big house, but the little house, and being raped, and telling him, obviously I turned 4. And when I explained to him that the brick on the fireplace were an easier focal point than looking at my father, my dad stood up and clenched his fists at me and said, not another word. The pastor stood up, walked right past me and over to my father and said, "You need a hug right now." And hugged my father and left me there. I was dumbfounded. But I guess, it was what I learned that I got. I never got support. People always called me the liar. They always, this pastor looked at me and said, "Jodie, you're very credible. I believe you, but I don't believe it was your father." And I said, "Well, he lived in our home. He drove our cars, and he looked just like him then." I mean, and it's outrageous how I think the sin probably lives in the church, because why else do these people hide it so much? And so much of my journey has honestly been alone. I lost my entire family through this process. As I told you this morning, you are my family now, and that's how I look at it. And I'm very peaceful with those things, because you can't bring help with you. And so nobody wanted to stand with me, so I stood alone. And that meant finding different churches. Many of those churches, I believe, are just a bunch of religious zealots who are hiding their sin behind a Bible. And, my parents held Bible study while we were being raped in the back room during the week, so I don't have a whole lot to do with religion. I have a very strong faith. I have a very strong faith, but I had to leave my parents to find that faith and the God that they stood up.
Right, right. Wow. I just want to say to you, I'm so sorry that you went through that. And I'm just giving you hugs right now, because I understand your pain. I feel it. I know what it's like. I feel that pain. And it's so hard, because to have to go through that and not be able to come forward and talk about it. For so long, I suppressed it because I was so afraid of what other people would think and how they would feel, and I'm at a place in my life where I don't allow those people to control me anymore. You know, I refuse to not speak up and speak out. For so long, like, we're holding on to things, holding on to all of this stuff and suppressing it. Now I'm 50 years old and I lived majority of my life unhappy. I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm just starting to be able to live, like 6 years ago. And it's the first time. And it feels so good. It feels so good. I had to go through years of therapy, you know, but I'm just in the best place of my life that I've ever been. And it feels so good. And I'm so grateful that I met you, because, you can feel my pain and I can feel yours, you know, and I understand what that's like. And to have to walk alone, when I first spoke up and spoke about it, I was called a liar. You go through all of that pain, and then you have family that stand there and know what's going on in the family. They know what's going on. They see it and say nothing. Just sweep it under the rug. Well, guess what? Today, it's no more sweeping anything under the rug. It's being exposed. It is what it is. We can't change it. We can't fix it, but we can work on ourselves to get healthy and get to a better place in our lives. We cannot suppress it, and if it takes exposing somebody in a family, it is what it is. Like, for so long, you helped me to understand, why do people say I was molested? That's kind of sugarcoating it.
Right.
You were raped.
Right.
It was a rape because you were a child. you know you had this authority figure in your life, and if we don't speak up, we continue to allow those generational curses to hurt other people in our family. And so it's so important to have these hard conversations. They are hard. They're not easy to have. They're not easy. And don't nobody want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable.
That's
But
right.
if
They're
we're
not
not
easy.
uncomfortable, then that means that we're not growing and we're
Right.
not going anywhere. So it takes you to be uncomfortable to grow, because we're the ones that suffered, and had to peel back all those layers of the onion. And what do onions do? They make you cry.
Right.
So we have to constantly continue to peel back those layers until we get our own healing. Because if we don't, we're hurting everybody else around us and our families, ones that's close.
Well, right. That's just it. My children really suffered, obviously, when I came out of a home like that. I didn't know how to be anything good. I mean, all I'd ever seen is destruction and pain and rape and murder. I'd witnessed death. My father was a great alcoholic. I got to drink beer with him when I was 8. So now all of a sudden at 18, when I get out of there, because I can't wait to get out of there, I pick a horribly abusive man. And as a result, my children were horribly abused. And I stayed with him for 18 years because I didn't tell my story. I just went from my parents' prison directly into his prison. He was now my warden and he gave me the rules and I was good at following the rules. And so I kept that. And then as a result, my children were also raped by their father. And it was at 35 that I decided that if this was as good as my life was going to get, I was completely fucked. Like I just didn't want to live. And so I left him at 35, and that's really when my healing began. I had begun talking to my family, but the problem is we all minimize it, right? Like we want to just say, oh, I think I was raped one time when I was 3. Well, the truth of my story was that wasn't true. And then my mom joined in the rooms, and then it doesn't end. There's so much more to the stories that we don't want to talk about because we want to minimize it, not just for other people, but because we don't want to feel the pain. It's been miserably painful to go back through my past. I don't know if it was worse living it as a child or going back now as an adult, because I have the ability to deny it. And so I have to force myself to, focus on my healing. And it's a dedicated effort. And people don't want to hear you. They want to stay in their own minimized denial, right? Because we all like to minimize. And so I'm happier now. I have freed myself from so many things that I brought upon myself. I used to smoke too much. I used to way overdrink every single night of the week because I was terrified to be alone, or I'd have, dreams of the murdered woman being under my feet, or I'd have dreams of dad coming in my room. Like I was just constantly plagued with everything. So I would drink way too much wine, then grab my Bible and go to sleep. I wasn't trying to be a horrible person. I wasn't trying to sin against God. I was trying to get through life. I'd get up and go to work and do the whole thing all over again. I don't have to do that anymore as much, but I still have flashbacks. I still have triggers. We can't lie and say it's going to be easy, but I can tell you one thing. I have a husband that loves me now. I have a husband that would never abuse me. My children are safe and on their way to recovery. And if I hadn't told my story and stayed in denial, my grandchildren would now be getting abused. Like it never ends. And so to me, there was no alternative for me. I was going to do whatever it took to heal. I didn't think it would be as painful as it's been, but you know what? It's getting better.
And I'm so grateful to hear that you invested that you invested in yourself to get to a place of healing. Because when you was talking about how you held on to that, it didn't just affect you, it affected your children, you know. And when we don't speak up and speak about it because we want to protect this person, who are we really hurting? We want to protect our abusers. Why do you think we protect our abusers?
We were trained to protect our abusers. So one of the parts about healing is actually learning to discern the difference between good and evil. And when we have evil parents, but we're taught that they're good, they give us hot food or whatever they do that's good for us, because I didn't really have a whole lot of good, but they were good, right? Like I had to obey them. I had to be a good kid. Nobody knew my story. And so it's what I knew. I mean, part of the very first thing that you have to decide is, to trust your own memories that come back. Because we all have these doors that are opening all the time. Something
Right.
comes back, and you know what we do? We close it. Nope, 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 nope. And so, because what we were taught as children was to deny and put it away and don't talk about it, you're going to get hurt, abused, whatever,
Mhm.
then you just continue in that pattern. And you have to learn how to undo those patterns. So the first thing is just to tell yourself, wow, there was an edge of a memory. I need to go explore that memory. We don't do that. It's that simple. But we just continue to deny it because it's what we were taught.
Right.
Right? Like your father telling you, don't say anything. What'd you do for 20 years? You didn't
Right.
say anything. He was your dad. I mean, it seems so simple, but it's not simple. It's very complicated, but it is simple in the sense of we are being good children by not telling. And we want to be good kids, right? We're not being bad. We usually go self-destroy ourselves as a result of that because we're dying on the inside of pain. Our
Right.
heart is hemorrhaging, and yet we just go around silently being good kids, quite honestly. And then we start being bad, and then everybody calls us bad, and then we accept that we're bad. And then
Right.
we just spiral down.
Right. And it's just a cry for help.
It's just a cry for help. That's absolutely right.
Cry for help. It's a
And
cry.
the only way to get out of that spiral is to tell the truth, to start telling the story.
And I remember being a teenager and being very promiscuous
Right.
because of my abuse, right?
Oh, me too.
I can remember hearing aunts and cousins saying, "You too grown, you too fast," you know, instead of now when I see somebody that is promiscuous or if I see somebody dressed in a certain way, I question, like she's been through something or
Yeah.
she's going through something. So I would just say that for anybody listening, be wise in how you judge other people because
Oh,
you don't know their story. You don't know what they've been through. And so instead of being judgmental, pull your sleeves up and get dirty. Help the person, help them, get them help, you know, talk to them, have deep conversations, let them know that you care and you want to know what's going on. How can I help you? That's helpful to a survivor or a victim at that time, that's very helpful to be able to get in there and say that instead of judging them.
right. Well, we talk about, why don't we tell our stories? Our families don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. And then the world doesn't want to hear it. Not even somebody at coffee. They don't want to hear that. They'll just be, I've had so many friends say to me, I think God just wants you to get over it, Jodie. And you know what I always say? He is helping me get over it. And if you don't want to listen to my story, then don't be by me. But I've had loving people mean well say, you got to get over your story. And sometimes I haven't responded well because I'll say to them, do you have any idea what you're asking me to get over? Do you have any idea? And when I tell what's going in my mind at that moment, if it was some horrific act of some sexual act I had to perform on my mother, all of a sudden they just look at me like I have no idea. Don't tell me to get over what you have no idea what you're asking me to get over. No idea. That's just like a knife in the soul of a survivor. And that's the fear that we carry, right? And that's the fear why we don't want to tell, because nobody wants to listen to us. I blogged this one thing about, I'm sorry they won't listen, because they want to show up and just talk about Taco Bell. I can't stand it. I'm bored out of my mind. Because when I've had this journey of, falling these huge trees, I don't want to talk about Taco Bell. I want to talk about real life. I want to talk about the things that set me free and set my heart singing today. I'm not scared of tragedy. I'm not scared of pain. I'm not scared of grief. And these people are, we terrify them because we bring grief to the table. We bring pain to the table. We bring confusion to the table. Or I think deeper still, what we bring is possibly their own story that they're hiding.
Right. Absolutely. And a lot of people will not talk at all. They will not say a word. And one of the questions I had wrote down for you was, how can we teach people how to speak up and how to be able to tell without waiting so long? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know for me, it took me a long time to speak up and speak out. And so I want to know, like,
Do you
what,
know what, to me, and this is my 2 cents, but having lived this, do you know what I believe the key is believing yourself, believing that your memory is accurate, believing that when people come against you and tell you that you're a liar, believing yourself. My father went into a hospital, and God had really spoken. This was years ago when I was in my 20s. It's a remarkable story, actually. And I heard God say an exact timeline. And I heard on this day, it was like 48 days or something. I got some scripture and it had 48 days. And I told my dad something's going to happen on the 48th day. My father actually ended up in a coma. He almost died. He had all this stuff going on with his heart. Anyway, long story short, he wakes up. I stay there. I tell the whole family to go home. I'm going to pray for him. I know he's going to come out and say he's sorry and heal the family. He wakes up. He opens his eyes. He looks at me and he says, I have my life. I have my baby girl, and I still have this lie. And I pushed him away, and I think I only probably saw him, I don't know, a handful of times the rest of my life, because I chose myself and not him. And I believed myself and not him. I was ready to start breaking his rules. So I would say, to me, the moral of the story is you have to believe in yourself. And they're going to call you liars. They're just going to call you. They have to. What are they going to do? Come out and say, "Oh, absolutely, I molested my daughter. Oh, I raped my daughter. I held her down while my husband raped her." They're not going to say that. They're never going to say that. They're not going to say, "Oh, I helped my husband clean up that night that he came home and had to go to the hospital after he murdered that woman." She knows. It's there. She's up on her property. They are not going to tell you the truth. But you know what? You have to believe in yourself no matter who. And that's what's terrible when you're small and fragile. I don't know what they build into us, but we come out with so much shame and unbelief in ourselves. We don't even know who we are. All we are is robots for what they tell us to do. That's what we are. And then we just hit the world trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
right.
That's what I
Right.
feel like.
Well, I'm, you know what? I'm so glad that you chose you and I chose me. I'm so happy.
Well,
I'm
I still
so
stayed
happy.
in an abusive marriage, it's because I love that I'm not this person that shows up and says, everything's beautiful now, life's perfect, and I'm awesome. But I'll tell you one thing, I serve a gigantic God who has blessed my life tremendously. I still wake up sometimes. I'll ask my counselor, well, there'll be a time when I could watch a horror movie like everybody else, but I see somebody's throat get slit, I can be, freaked out for hours and days. Like a few months ago, I was in the bathtub and I was doing this self-care. I was going to do bubbles and essential oil. Everything was perfect. And you know what? I had a horrific nightmare, or a flashback, an absolute flashback, a body memory flashback of Dad putting that knife in my hand because we cleaned her body off in the bathtub. It was terrible. My husband walked in. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm okay." And he's like, "You are not okay." And I lost probably another week of my life. Just, when those things come back, what that feels like. You can't just put that away in 10 seconds. I had to call my counselor. I'm up for days, but most of the time now it's pretty good. Most of the time it's pretty good. But you
Right.
know what? I'd rather live that and know who I am. I am so proud to reintroduce myself to who I am every day, because I lived it. It's there. It's the truth. It's the real story. It's just really cool to know what I lived through,
Right. Yep. Yep.
right? And to say
Yes.
it.
Yes. And be able to say it. Right. And the more that you tell your story, the more healing it brings for you.
That's
The
absolutely true.
more that you talk about it, some people, for the people who told you you needed to get over it,
Mhm.
they haven't walked in your shoes.
Well, this is that kind of Christian approach, you guys, that I'm just going to say just pisses me right off, because
Talk about it, please.
there is no nirvana, that just because you know Jesus, all of a sudden, poof, all of that disruption, chaos, and pain is gone. You know what? I've known Jesus since I was 8 years old. I actually wrote an article because we were in this Baptist church. I went every day. I had no idea who God was. My dad was whatever. Like I didn't know who God was at all. But this traveling salesman comes through, and well, I guess he's a traveling whatever. I don't know, but he was a Jesus guy that wasn't from that church. I was 8 years old, and I was so impressed with who he was. I wrote a letter to him that he later published in the Christian Today. That was when I was 8 years old, because I knew whatever that man had was something different than what my parents had. And they Christians tend to do this motto thing, like you come to me and then everything in your past is gone. That's just horseshit. It's absolute horseshit. I know that God has continued to hunt me down when I run from him, when I can't take the pain, when I go gamble too much or drink too much. God is right on my tail saying, Jodie, you don't know I love you yet, do you? I've got to show you how much I love you. I've got to show. He's never said, oh my God, you're horrifying. Oh my God, you're such a sinner. You know what he says is, I need to put more love right there. Come here, let me hold you. Can I put more love there? It's a process. It's a process. I have no idea that, like if I'm 75 and I'm sitting there, will I have a flashback? Maybe, because I don't want to know everything. Living with two parents where your home was just allowed to be overridden by evil, stuff happened all the time. You know what I mean? So I don't want to just sit down in some weird fashion and have it all come back to me. If it comes back to me, it comes back to me, but I don't want to go hunt it all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I'm open to it. And it's, Paul had in the Bible, remember that thing in his side that he said that he couldn't get, he called it something, but it stayed with him all the time and he never got rid of it. So I just think as human beings, would it even be good to go on? How could it, if all of a sudden just poof, I was wonderful tomorrow, don't I just poof disappear too? Who was I for the last 45 years?
Right.
I don't want to just poof disappear. I want to know who I am.
Right.
So I don't believe that all of a sudden you're just healed. I don't believe it's God's way. I think God wants to love those areas. I think he wants to go back and hug us and hold us and bring that healing balm of his heart and soul. And then all of a sudden you're like free from it. Like, oh, okay, I get that. Until the next time I trip up, like it's failing forward, you know what I mean?
Right.
I've just really learned grace and I'm okay with that. I'm 56 and it's a way better way to live than trying to apply all these rules. Just put in more good. Just be open your heart more. I think the best thing we can do to be Christians is to discover who we are.
Right. Finding out true identity in Christ.
Absolutely. Be authentic. There's so many people who are just ridiculously fake and would love to put that fake sugar on you too.
Yeah. They want to wear a mask. And that's why they keep attracting the mask that they're wearing, because they're not being authentic.
So that is so true. Absolutely.
The needs don't get met if you're wearing a mask because you're attracting the wrong person.
That's exactly right.
And I want to share this. One of the questions was, what are your thoughts on some professionals who say that memories can't be trusted? That's made it difficult to explore this nagging sense that something else that's been repressed is just below the surface.
So I actually have, you have to know that I have uncovered, recovered, whatever the heck you want to call it. I've had to go back and really trust my memory. And to that point, if you do, there's a lot of study around memory. Here's the one thing that you can trust. Usually when you have a very traumatic memory, there's going to be a body memory that comes back with it. Like if you have just a little tiny thought and then you move forward with that thought, what's going to happen is your body's going to start responding with you. You're going to have pain somewhere in your body. Like it's not just going to be, as you play that memory out and go with it, you're going to have this effect in your body. But deeper still, I think when people talk about memories that aren't accurate, this is the kind of thing that they mean. And I just read this other day, this really cool Christian lady who, for 40 years, I think it's called On the Edge of Hope. And for 40 years, she's been a psychologist. And what she said was, memories can't be trusted. And in this way, and this was the example she used. If you're a child and you see a backyard and you see your grandmother's house and the tree in the backyard felt like it was 40 feet tall, that's when your memory's inaccurate, because you were, 2 feet tall. So the tree seemed 40 feet tall. So memories can be inaccurate in that kind of way. But if you ever think that you're manufacturing it, it just doesn't happen. Try to manufacture it. Actually, I've tried. Like, just try to make something up. You can't. And the other thing is that will always stay the same. That one little piece that you're seeing will always stay the same until you stop and say, write it out, talk it out with somebody. The second you start going with it, it's going to grow. And so I would say trust it. There is nothing that I've had returned to me that I can say wasn't accurate. In fact, with the murder, there was a lot of things that I could go see. Like, I remember Dad and I coming back and blowing out the back of the trunk of the car. Now, this is 1968. These cars were big. So I would immediately go to my grandmother's house. She didn't live there for years, but I would see the spigot, where the spigot was, because I remember where the hose came out from the house and we were blowing it out. And you know why I did that? This is what my counselor always said, because I was trying to invalidate my memory, because if I invalidated my memory, I was just making it up and I could get on with my life. Take this little pill, you're all screwed up, and go about your day. But that's not what happened. The truth was, every time I tried to validate my memory, it was accurate. So I would say trust that. When they talk about memories that aren't accurate, it's in that kind of way where it was be bigger, or maybe it was on the left, but traumatic memories live in a different part of your brain, actually. Mm-hmm. So they actually say they're a little bit more vivid, because like something big happens and all of a sudden your mind says, oh my God, that's so hugely important, put it right here. I only know that because I've been counseling for 25 years, because I've had to, you guys, just to even stand here and even be the person that I am, which is quite remarkable to have overcome as much as I have. But those memories go into this different part of your brain. And so when they're recovered, they're quite vivid, actually.
Right. Yeah.
I'd say trust it.
I would say trust it as well, because it's so many memories that I have forgotten, because when you suppress, you forget a lot. But when you start going to therapy and they start probing and pulling stuff out of you, a lot of my memories came back. So I ended up having to get EMDR done, the eye movement desensitization, um, the eye movement therapy, because those thoughts, the memories was just so strong in my head and I couldn't shake it, and any little thing would trigger me, you know. It could be a smell, a scent, it could be somebody say a certain thing to me, a certain word, I didn't like wearing pajamas. I couldn't wear pajamas because I knew that was easy access, so I was want to sleep in my clothes for a long, even as an adult, I still would sleep in clothes, and I just laid around like if it was okay,
Right.
like, because that was my protective mode, but it just baffles me as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and just hearing, like, who did she have to go to as a
God.
kid, you know?
Right. Even when I was little, I'm thankful he found me when I was little, I'll tell you. Right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I believe he's really, really been with me, even though tragedy has still continued, and followed me still. I can't even imagine who I would have been had I not known him when I was small.
Right. Wow. I was looking at some of the comments. She said, when I go through trauma, my brain throws the experiences away. I have horrible memories, and I think it's coping mechanism that I adapted to find peace within. I forget so much, it's crazy. She said, laugh out loud. It's a specific soap that if I smell triggers me to remember a time of my life when I was happy. Smell triggers a lot.
Yes.
A lot
Yeah.
of memories for me as well. Auntie, we got that in common. A lovely Melanie. Is that somebody you know?
No.
I don't know who that is. I can't see.
No, but memories are funny if you think about it. There's no way that we could keep them with us. How could we and survive? We have to go through childhood. We have to go to school and learn what 2 + 2 is. And we have to learn home economics, and we want to look at boys. Like, you don't keep it with you. So it's a very logical thing that your mind does. Your mind says, you got to survive and put this away because you don't, as a child, you don't even have the means to unwrap it. All you're doing is throwing it away as fast as you can just to get on with your day. So it's a God-given ability when you're little. So when your memories come back, trust them, because now I think you're in a better place, or you're in a stronger place. And all of a sudden now your body is starting to relax and saying, wow, do you remember that? Like, that happens all the time. It's a natural part of life. It's
Right.
nothing that we should fear. It's just natural.
Right. Some other comments is, hey niece, Malaya, that was my niece. Seeing people that resemble my abuser causes triggers.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, it's a certain way of touch that is a trigger. I can also resonate with that too. A certain touch, because it's yeah, definitely.
No, I stayed single for 13 years because I just couldn't tolerate it anymore in life. After the children's dad, I dated, but I still struggle with wanting to be alone for that reason, because there's just so many things that trigger me. We watch a movie and all of a sudden I'm off, and that gets old. That gets old for your partner. It gets old for yourself, but it's just part of who I am. And I have to, accept that piece of me. And we
Right.
should accept those parts, right? And have a boundary around it. Say, don't touch me. I don't like it.
Exactly. Boundaries is so important,
Huge.
especially with a person coming from trauma, and it doesn't even have to be sexual trauma, but any kind of trauma. We need to set boundaries anyway without even having trauma. But once you have trauma, your boundaries was violated, so you don't know what boundaries are. So you have to learn boundaries. But it's important to set those boundaries and say, look, I don't like to be touched. I don't like it, and make it clear. We have to set those boundaries. And a lot of times when you do set boundaries, people don't like to respect the boundaries because they don't know what boundaries is either.
Yeah.
But we definitely have to we have to definitely making sure we set those boundaries and we are very clear about what we like and we don't like.
Right.
Um,
And that's part of finding your story. Because if you don't have your voice, how do you know what you want? How do you know what you like? How do you know what's you and what was the abuse that's making you respond that way? Right? Which
right,
one of us likes to go out and be promiscuous or overdrink? We didn't grow up and say we're going to be that way. So telling your story helps it's the riddle that we've got to get to. It's the very beginning. It's why I always start my story at 3, because that's where I started, in that house. And we have to go back to those beginning times to build from there, particularly when you come from trauma. When you have these blank spots, people say, oh, I don't remember, 6 years of my childhood. I'm always suspect about why.
right. Somebody made a comment, and it's a really good point she made. She said couples should get counseling before marriage to process what they are getting themselves into. And that is so true, because a person that comes from this type of trauma, they have PTSD. So there are a lot of triggers. And
Yeah.
I think that, going into any kind of relationship, people should know, because, it's hard to deal with. It can be very challenging.
Well, see, and here, I think one of the problems with that is so many of us survivors don't know our story. So we get married like, hey, this is who I am. Then the older you get, the harder it is to actually suppress the past. And now all of a sudden you become this person. Then what do? You know what I
Right.
mean? So I think, again, just gracefully going forward, it'd be wonderful if you know your story. Like, when I got married this time, you bet he knew everything, and this is who I am, and I'll go to counseling when I need to, and he's witnessed where I've had flashbacks, just full blown flashbacks that stop you in life. But if you don't know, then what do? You know what I'm saying? So I think this well-rounded thing for survivors is to have this full essence of grace around yourself, and say, instead of always thinking that you're fucking up all the time, you have this, oh wow, I'm discovering more all the time. You know what I mean? So it's a different way to look at it, because it's a constant growing process, right?
She said, when everyone is quiet about former trauma in the family except you, how do you live authentically through that?
You leave. I just think, honestly, you have to get yourself to a place of distance. In my blog, I talk about it. so much, because I'm going to tell you guys, there's a cost to that. If you have a family that wants to keep you quiet and shut you up, that's going to cost you. It's going to cost you time that you could have been healing, but they're going to try to keep you quiet. As you can't, while I was with my mother, I couldn't relive the trauma and the abuse that she brought to me, because she was right next to me, because she kept me quiet. And she was right next to me, not because she liked me, but because she wanted to keep me quiet. You have to be incredibly, talk about a boundary. If you stay close to family that is in that sinful wickedness and wants to hide it, don't stay by them. You love them from a distance. If you have to stay by them because you can't find that, because I know it's hard, love them from a distance then, but do not let them put their stamp of whatever on your life. You have to, I just think that you have to, I call it maggots in your soul. You can't keep the maggots in your soul. You have to get away from them. Even if you just tell yourself for 6 months, I'm going to go, I think you'll extend it another 6, because it's so freeing to not have that poisonous air around you all the time. You're never going to live in full truth if you stay with a family who's still hiding abuse. It's just not possible.
Right. No, it's not. And I've been through the family thing where, so funny. You know, and the reason why now I feel like I have to speak my truth and walk in my truth is because this is what God is calling me to do. Once I came out and told my story, um, once I came out and told my story, I had family that wanted to cut me off, didn't want to talk to me, asking me why now and all of this. But this is why God is calling me to this calling, is because he want people to break the generational curses. This has got to stop, you know.
Yes.
And if we don't speak up and speak out, it don't only affect us, but it's affecting everyone around us.
That's right.
It's affecting so many people in your family. Like you shared, you said your daughters were abused, but they started getting healing once you came out and told your truth.
Right.
And once you started getting your healing. So we have to protect our children,
Right.
and the children around us, our nieces, our nephews, brothers. We have to protect it, because if we don't come forward and talk about it, it keeps happening from generation to
Oh, it
generation
does.
to generation. And I'm just wondering, like, how long has it really been going on with my father? How many other people are affected by this, and then how many people have they affected from this? And it doesn't have to be sexual abuse, but just it's abuse period, because I know I was abusive, because I was so angry on the inside.
Oh, absolutely.
I did a lot of self-destruction, but I also hurt a lot of people, with my behaviors. So it just continues to go on from generation to generation into generation. And until we step up and make a stop, because see, it's going to stop right here for me and mine.
Right.
You
Amen.
know,
Amen. For me
and
too.
it has to. And I just thank God, because as I look back at my life and look at where God has brought me from, he was with me the whole entire time. I just wasn't hearing his whisper in my ear saying, I love you.
Because he's a
I know
gentleman.
what happened. I
Right.
know
We're
what
used to
happened.
people bowling us over.
Right, right. And so we have to break, we cannot protect the abusers, you
No.
know. And I'm not saying that this person is not gonna, you have to forgive, because this is how we take back our power. We relinquished our power to them because we given them so much power. Just think about it. For so many years, I wouldn't wear pajamas. you
Mhm.
know I had felt like I had to protect myself. I always felt like, I was always on a defense, you know and I couldn't put my guards down and relax. I couldn't just relax. I couldn't go to a yoga class because I was too tense. constantly all the time. I couldn't, just go and hang out with some friends and just be all relaxed. I'm sitting there having anxiety, thinking about the next thing. I got a million thoughts running through my head, you know, and now, that I was able to forgive, I took back all of that power. I'm wearing pajamas now. This is how we take back our power. When we don't forgive and we continue to hate them, we're the ones that walk around miserable and unhappy. We don't have any freedom whatsoever. And so, you know, because you are breaking your silence doesn't mean that you have to hate this person, that you want to you're saying it because you want to hurt this person. You're saying it because this is your truth, and we have to speak up. It's no way that we can walk around in our truth or even want to help anybody else without first healing ourselves.
Well, and when you're saying that, what while writing this blog, I've been brutally honest in that blog. There have been times when I've wanted to take it down. There have been times when people around the world have said to me, wow, this story is so hard to read. And I think, is this good or bad? And they always end with, but please keep telling it, because there's so many of us out here that do not know how to tell our own. This one lady in the UK said a really cool thing to me. She said, if they wanted a different story written, they should have lived a different life. And you know what? It's the truth. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. All I'm trying to do is unravel the riddle that they left built into me.
Right.
I think when you talk about forgiveness, to me, I just don't want the torture of worrying about anything about them. And like we talked about that, always looking at yourself, and God has his flashlight on us, not them. And it's easy. It's been relatively easy for me to forgive. What was difficult for me was to actually grieve, though. Grieving was harder for me than forgiveness. And I think sometimes maybe we get those things confused, because grieving can feel like it's unforgiveness, but it's not unforgiveness. It feels like it's torturous, I think, to really actually understand your story, have seen it, move close to it and embrace it, but then to have to grieve, like when you said, Latarsha, about nobody was there for you. There's been times when I've had to go back in counseling, and I remember this one time, it was after the murder, and I was on my bed. I was 3.5 years old, because halves matter then. And I just tell my counselor, I can't quit looking down the hall. And he said, Jodie, you have to tell that little girl no one's coming. Those moments of grief can feel like unforgiveness, but I think grief is honestly stronger than unforgiveness, and people get the two confused. So when I walked through those huge, heavy grief things that I had to go through in my life, forgiveness, I just didn't find that difficult, because it became indifferent to me once I grieved it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I could leave it.
Right.
And I could just leave it at the throne of God and ask him. There's times I've asked him, just could you go back in that room with me and just pick me up, because I'm stuck there, and I'm stuck in that spot, that not having comfort. And so anyway, enough about that. That's a whole nother thing. But I think grief is one of the biggest things that we do confuse sometimes for unforgiveness. And it's just pain. And
Right.
pain, and let your pain be. Don't try to stop your pain. God does not want your pain to stop. Like, it's interesting to me that we think we have to stay by these people. Just think about this logically. Like, there's God, and God sees this horrific thing happen to you. He's a witness to your rape, not by one people, but 3 people in that room that day. And then you grow up, and you know what he says to you? This is the assumption that God wants us close to them. Oh, I need you to go back and love those people. It's your job now to go back and change them. I just don't believe that that's true. I don't think it's a loving God at all. I can pray from over here. Is it my job to fix them? I just don't think it is my job to fix them. I think my parents told me it was my job to fix them. I don't think God tells me it's my job to fix them. I think God says, go to a different land. Go have fun. Let me deal with them. I'll repay them, or I'll heal them, or I'll do whatever. But it's not our job. I can't even imagine saying to somebody, you guys, let's say it was the neighbor who took me into a room and abused me with 2 other people. And then you guys said to me, I really think you guys should stay close to them. God wants you to maintain that relationship and find forgiveness and bring them to God. Wouldn't that be bizarre? Why
Yeah,
would but we do this with family. I just don't. I think it's one of the things that we've got to quit telling people, because it keeps people stuck and it keeps them away from their story.
right. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. Somebody made a comment, and it's a couple of comments, but we only got like a few more minutes, but it's okay. Our attitudes are at its worst when it was Tara said people can start the conversation about abuse with the abuser faster, but never want to talk to the abused.
Exactly.
And then another person said, I think I saw it. She said, forgiveness isn't necessary for healing.
You know, I kind of think when it comes to that, I'm going to agree with that on some point, because I believe that if you heal, all of those things kind of come into alignment. And again, it's like slapping that be good band-aid on you. I don't believe in that. I don't open my Bible and hear Jesus say, or God say, okay, Jodie, you got to do 6 good things today. I just don't see that. But what I do see is, wow, Lord, I never saw how much you love me. I never saw how wicked people are. I never knew how to discern between right and wrong and good and evil. But it's not this weird band-aid of being better. And so if forgiveness could be a goal, I mean, it's there, it's your journey with Jesus. That's what I would say. I'm not going to sit here.
I would I
I
would
think you
say
can heal and move forward.
I would agree with her that you don't forgiveness on your healing journey, because when you first start off on your healing journey, everything starts to fall into place.
Yes.
So as you're working on your own healing, you're not focusing on anybody else, you're just focusing on yourself.
Right.
I can honestly say that I was still very bitter, very angry, when I first started my healing process. So it wasn't until I got to a place in my own healing that God softened my heart for me to forgive. So I understand that, but like, I'm totally in agreement with you, but I think that once you get to a place in your healing, you will forgive. And I think that one of the things that helped me to start forgiving when God started softening my heart, when I told you about that letter, it took me 5 months to write a 7-page letter to my father. And I, you know, in my letter, I was explaining how much pain I was in, and how I was working through some things. But it took me a long time to forgive. It really, really did. And I cannot say that, that was a healing takes a lifetime. It takes a lifetime,
Yes.
because you have to constantly keep putting in the work. You have to be patient with yourself, just the way you would be patient with a little child. We have to be patient with ourselves like that. We have to embrace ourselves like that. We have to tell ourselves, yes, I love you. You're going to get through this, and we can get through it. Healing takes time. It takes a lot of energy. It's not an overnighter. It is not an overnighter, and it takes time. Um, Today, we want to leave with um, learning how to discern between good and evil, light and darkness, abusive and non-abusive behavior through telling your story. um, One of the points that Jodie was saying, that family members will often not stand with you in pursuit of freedom. Stand anyway. You're not alone. God is right beside you. So, when it's time for you, and I want you to do your UCU and and explain that, but I just want people to walk away with this. It is time to break your silence. Walk in your truth. Talk about your abuse. Talk about what happened, especially talk to them with about it with your children. Because when we don't be open about this, it affects everyone around us. We got to break these generational curses. It's time to stand up for the truth. And this is your truth. And don't let anybody, if you don't have anybody standing by your side, stand alone and know that you're not alone, because God is right there with you. And when you're walking in alignment with God, and you are, God is calling you to walk in your truth and tell your story. Telling your story brings healing. Don't let people tell you that you cannot tell your story. They don't want to hear this. Then that's not the company you need to keep. We have to surround ourselves with safe people and set boundaries. And it's okay to not talk to people that will not respect your boundaries. It's okay not to have them in your space. We're constantly told you got to forgive, you got to forgive. You can forgive, but you don't have to allow these people to stay in your space. It's okay not to talk to them, because you have to protect your peace. Your peace means more to you than anything. My peace does. I can guarantee you that. And so when somebody's calling me up and not supporting me and making me feel loved and trying to put me down for speaking my truth, no, you have no access to me at all. And you will not. And we have to set those kind of strong boundaries. And can you close us out with the CUC? Oh, let me just see if there's.
So, you guys, I believe in angels. I think we all believe in angels coming from a dark past that I came from. My parents, I really believe both of them were demon possessed. You could see it in their eyes. Other people could see it in their eyes. I say that because it's been kind of cool. I really feel like in my life I've met a few angels, and I felt like I met an angel one time, and he actually wrote this down on a piece of paper, and what he wrote down was, "You see you." And I thought about that forever. And even if as it relates to my husband, if I continue to look at my husband and think he's not giving me this, and don't you know all I've been through, and I need this boundary, and I need this quiet, and I need this, and I need this. And all of a sudden, when I started looking and using that, seeing myself, you see you, Jodie, all of a sudden it was like God saying to me, if you don't see yourself, I can't heal that area. When you say that you need that from your husband, what is that you need inside you? And it changed everything about me. It changed, it made me, it seems so simple, you guys, but if we don't stop and see ourselves, quit looking at your abuser, quit looking at your husband, quit looking at your girlfriend, look to God and say, what is that need? Why am I bickering about that? Why can't I get off that? Why am I still focused on the guy that hurt me? Why am I blah, blah? When we say, God, help me see myself, you'll find your story, you'll find the need, and then God comes in and brings his love. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you so much. Lisa, you're my angel sister too, and I love you.
I love
So
it.
what is the blog? What's your blog
So
information?
everything I do is, you guys, as I told you when I was in my 20s, is a prisoner by no crime of my own. You can find me that's what I blog under. That's where I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Reddit. Actually, I just posted on Reddit to ask the Unsolved Mysteries group that's about 80,000 strong to help me solve this murder. And so pray for me about that, because I know where her body is. I just need to bring her up. So anyway, that's where you
Wait a
can
minute,
find.
somebody asked you a question about that. They said, did you ever know why she was murdered? And I do want to say they asked about your parents. So your father is deceased and your
Yes,
mother is still alive.
my mother still lives up on the property with the body. I haven't talked to my mother in years. That day that I went down to the hotel room with my father, he raped her, and she turned around and started yelling at him. His friend that was always with us, was in the room and held her down, and my father slit her throat, threw her in the back of the car after we cleaned up the room, and buried her up on their property. So she was killed because she was going to leave that room and tell. I can't tell you the exact words, but I know that was the message that she was screaming at them. So
Wow.
that's why she was killed. When he was dying, actually, I spent 6 hours with him. That's a whole nother thing, but in that 6 hours, he did apologize for the murder 2 times. And I told him I'd bring her up and bury her right, but I don't know if I can get that done. God wants me to, I will, but
Amen.
anyway, so we
Yeah.
can keep going no matter what we've been through. That was horrific for sure.
Yeah. Again, I'm so happy that we met. I'm so happy to
Oh,
call.
we're not done together. This has been
Oh,
wonderful. Thank you so much.
I know we not, but I just want to thank you everyone for tuning in. Please go follow her on Instagram, Twitter as Prisoner by No Crime of My Own. She's incredible. I met her just by reading her content and it resonated with me. And God put it in my spirit. And I said, I've got to reach out to her. I gotta talk to her and see how God made it unfold just like this. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate you. Oh, they said you need a part 2. They said you need a part 2. Okay,
that's
amen.
wonderful.
You got that. You got that. We will do a part 2. All
All
right.
right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay. I have to go here.